Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Wednesday, April 27th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 130 days, the game against Michigan in 214 days. A few quick housekeeping notes to get started today. We talked on yesterday's show about how more transfer news could be coming before the May 1st deadline for immediate eligibility without a waiver. And then on Tuesday, safety Marcus Hooker put his name in the portal. So for the moment, the Buckeyes would be at 84 scholarships, one below the NCAA mandated limit. And then for the second time this week, a former Buckeye is headed to play for Mac Brown at UNC. After legend Cavazos announced that he would be a Tar Heel on Monday, Jacolby Cowan followed suit on Tuesday evening. And then there is going to be some big basketball news a little later on today. Malachi Branham is set to announce his decision on whether he will keep his name in the NBA draft or return to Ohio State for another year. That's going to happen at a press conference at 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. All right. Housekeeping out of the way, now on with the show. Last week, the great Bill Greene was here to share his projections for where the Buckeyes could end up on offense in the 2023 recruiting class. Today, we're going to talk about the defense. So, Bill, thanks for being here.
Hey, good to be here, Tom. How you doing?
Always a pleasure. Always like talking a little recruiting with you. We're getting into the point of the season. We were talking before we started recording. We're getting into the point of the cycle where it's starting to get a little more real, but we're still pretty far out. There's still a lot of names out there. There's still a lot of camps to go through. Visits, unofficial and official, so still a long way to go, but it's kind of a good place to take a little bit of a check of where things stand right now. So let's start on the defensive side of the ball with the defensive ends. They have one Buckeye legacy already committed there. They've got a few other irons in the fire. What do you think? Where do you think Larry Johnson ends up with in this class?
Yeah, it's really tough to say right now. We've got a lot of names right now. Will Smith is committed. I know he's looked at as a DN. He could be a D tackle. And most of the names we're going to mention from here on out probably fit that category too. You just don't see those, Tyleik Williams types on the horizon right now. Could happen later down the road. The guys they've got now, the DNs are pretty exciting, really. Will Smith, I don't know how they see him, to be honest. DN, D tackle, we see where he grows and how he develops. But then the two big fish at DN are Matayo Uiagalelei, who I think they have a great shot at. And, you're battling Bama for that kid. And, you'd rather be battling Purdue or Michigan State. But, you want to go after the big fish. You're going to fight the big dogs to get them. So they're in that game for sure. The relationship with Larry Johnson is great. The good thing is I see no chance that kid ends up at Clemson. So once you rule the obvious out in Clemson, I think it's an Ohio State, Alabama battle. Then we wait and see if Lincoln Riley and his crew out there can get the kid to stay home. And that's a big point of emphasis for them going forward, is to keep those California kids at USC. So long way to go with him. I don't think he's anywhere near making a decision yet, but Ohio State's fighting for it. They're also trying to get Notre Dame commit Keon Keeley to decommit and come to Ohio State. He's visited. Hasn't really been much movement there, much info there of anything going on, but, he did visit as a committed Fighting Irish member, so you got to keep an eye on him. He's such a great player. Then we drop down to a kid from Glenville, Arvell Reese, who looks like they're recruiting as a linebacker, but, man, I think that kid's going to get big, and I think he's going to fit that Leo position fantastic. So Arvell is he's either a stand-up outside guy or a hand in the dirt outside guy, however they want to play him. I'm not sure how they see him right now. Arvell, I expect to go through the process and take visits everywhere in America, tell everyone he's 100% wide open, and, commit to Ohio State at the appropriate time. Ted Ginn lets his guys know that it's really valuable to the program for them to go through and visit Indiana and visit Michigan and visit Notre Dame and, play the game out, and then commit late and sign late. And I expect that'll probably be the case again with Arvell Reese. So DN, that they would love to have Uiagalelei and Keeley. I think they really want Reese, who I like a lot. And, those are really the front runners right now on the outside.
All right, and one quick note before we move on to the defensive tackles. You mentioned Matayo Uiagalelei. If people are wondering why you were talking about Clemson as being such a logical fit, his brother, of course, is DJ Uiagalelei, who's been the quarterback for Clemson the last couple of years. So, that's the tie-in there. But if you can cross the list, that obviously would be a pretty big step towards getting him a little closer to Columbus. So, the interior of the defensive line is kind of wide open at the moment. I mean, it feels like last summer we were at those camps, and we were at those camps in June, and there were like a ton of defensive line we were talking about. Is this group a little behind schedule in terms of not really having names, more solid names at this point, or is this just kind of like this is just kind of the norm of this point in the process?
Yeah, I don't know right now. I don't know what to say. I mean, there are a lot of names. You got AJ Hoffler and Tamir Robinson. Derek LeBlanc was kind of one of their favorites for a while, and I think that one's kind of fallen off. Jason Moore is a kid that I really like. Alex has written about him a lot. He's out of DeMatha. He would be my favorite right now of the guys they're in on. To be honest, of the other group that we mentioned, I mean, I don't know. I don't see anybody there that's, earth-shattering. That Darren Reed is a kid, I think if they want him, they're going to get him. So there are a lot of names right now, but I think at this time last year, I don't think Hero Canoe was looked at as a lock for Ohio State or even a probable for Ohio State. So, you got to let this process work a little bit. I really like, I would like in this point in time to be, the layup line's been over for a while. Once you get to the spring game, now you're into the first quarter now. So this is almost like if they're behind, I would say it's like an NBA team being behind 28-24 at the end of the first quarter. Yeah, you're losing. It's not a big deal. The June camps are when things really start to crystallize for me, and that takes it up to about the halfway point, halftime of an NBA game, which is kind of significant. So we got a long way to go here. We're just now getting into the spring evaluation phase where coaches are on the road. And that will lead all the way through May and lead right into the June camps. And that's when the rubber really starts to hit the road, is when you get, and it's not even at the beginning of the June camps, it's when they're all completed. And we're at late June. That really tells us a lot. Right now is a really good starting point, but really that's all it is. It's just a starting point right now.
Well, and at that starting point, they are sort of linked to a couple of really great linebackers. Tackett Curtis, Todd Bowles, but it sounds like you are much higher on their chances of landing one of those guys than the other one. So let people know kind of where things stand with those guys and other big names to know at linebacker.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of big names. I don't have a lot of other names, to be honest with you, but I think Tackett Curtis is a kid that they clearly lead for. And if, I had to make an educated guess, I think they're going to get that kid. And he's out of the South from Louisiana, and surprisingly, I mean, Ohio State is really fighting Wisconsin for this kid. So they'll win that battle, I believe. So I think Tackett Curtis is going to be in this class. Feel pretty good about that, as good as you can feel in April. And then Todd Bowles, man, I think that was an Al Washington relationship there, and I don't feel good about that at all. I don't really like Ohio State's chances there. You got to get him back on campus. You got to kind of start the process over and hope that, what he liked about Ohio State a year ago, you got to hope he likes it again with this, new defensive staff. So wouldn't be as optimistic there. And then, of course, we're back down to Arvell Reese again. Is Arvell Reese a linebacker? Or is he a D end, and I really don't know. My feeling is I lean toward him, being a D end. But, as we transition back in this class and we look at the safeties, there's a safety that they're high on that I think they have a great chance at getting that I think is going to be a linebacker. So, I think in the end, position doesn't matter. You're really looking to grab as many great players as you can, and then you plug them in. You fit them where they fit. So, yeah, right now, the only linebacker I would mention is Tackett Curtis right now. They're going to swing as hard as they can for Bowles to try to get back in that thing or, higher than they are now. And then Arvell Reese is kind of a swing guy. So that would be it right now, how I see the linebacker position.
Well, and just like Bowles and Al Washington had that pre-existing relationship that then kind of evaporates when Al Washington leaves. At corner, you had, for example, A.J. Harris, who had a great relationship with Kerry Combs. Well, Kerry Combs leaves.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of changed that recruitment a little bit. And they have Dijon Johnson in the class already, but who else do you think they're looking at for the corner position right now in the cycle? Who's still kind of at the top of the board and really still in play for them?
Yeah, they got the Georgia kid, Keon Lee, and I think they're going to get him. I feel really good about where they stand with him. He's he was committed to Georgia at one time, and Ohio State has tracked him, and I love where things stand with him. To go back to Dijon Johnson, I mean, I think that kid is really good, and I think he's pretty special, and I think that was a great get for Ohio State. And I think it kind of got glossed over with all the spring game hoopla and everything, and I don't think it should have been glossed over. I think that kid can really play, can really go. Getting the one corner locked in now. If you can get Lee to commit, then you're free to kind of scour around for that third guy that they want, and there's some guys they're chasing there. Daniel Harris out of Miami is a kid that I really like as well. To jump back at A.J. Harris, man, that one was, I think it's going to be a Kerry Combs casualty there. And I think A.J. Harris is going to end up in Florida. Again, it's early, things can change, but, you would really have to get him back on campus again and have Perry Eliano, Tim Walton really, get that process rolling again for Ohio State. Right now, I think Johnson and Lee are more likely. Johnson will stick, I believe. Lee is a kid they're going to get, but A.J. Harris, I'm just not feeling that one right now. But there are other corners that they can get in on, and I can see them taking 3 corners in this class.
Well, if they take 3 corners, that would make this potentially a very, very big defensive back class, because you wrote last week you could see them taking 4 or even maybe 5 safeties in the class, which, if you just look at a normal recruiting class, that would be an insanely high number. But then since you wrote that, they have lost a bunch of bodies at safety recently with Bryson Shaw and Andre Turrentine and Marcus Hooker are all hitting the portal in just like the last week or two. So who are some of the names to know that might fill that 4 or even 5 safety spots in this class?
Yeah, we've already got Malik Hartford committed. Cedric Hawkins has been committed for a while. Then the kid that I'd mentioned before is Jaden Bonsu, who I think they're in a great position to take, but I'm not convinced that he stays a safety. He looks like a kid that's going to get really big to me. And if you watch his film, 90% of the plays are of him striking people. And I mean, he hits people and he knocks them down, but that's really not where the safety position is going anymore in college football. Mike Doss's days are over. Mike would be a linebacker today. Not so sure the Bonsu kid doesn't end up a linebacker. I think Ohio State's in great position to land him, but I'm just not sure safety's going to be his position. There's another one of those South Florida Express kids, Damian Fagan, who I think is either going to be in this class or he's really close to being in this class. So now you're probably looking at 4 probables. And then they're chasing Caleb Downs, who I think they're in on that one. And he might be the best defensive back in America, regardless of corner, safety, hybrid, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, I think if you can get Bonsu, you take him and figure out the position later. Damian Fagan, if you can get him, you take him. Caleb Downs, probably a kid you're going to have to chase a long time. And, you might want to stay at 4 there, and he may force you to go 5 because you would never tell him no. If all these other kids commit before he does, well, he's going to be a part of the class if he wants in. So, I think defensive back, I think there's a lot of guys on the board there. And like you mentioned, there have been a lot of guys walk out the door here for Ohio State. Plus, Legend Cavazos left as well. So that DB room is thin. So when you start talking about taking, 5, 6, 7 DBs, they need them. They just had, a ton of them walk out the door. You got a few other ones left there that I think are questionable in terms of, how they fit, what their talent is. So that's a position that absolutely needs to get restocked. Then you look last year, they had kids in that position last year that they thought they were going to get, that they didn't get. They had the Brooks kid, The two safeties, Wompka was one of them, so the Branch kid they lost. So I think they need to restock that DB room. So I won't be surprised if it's a number that really shocks people. In terms of what we've seen in the past, where you take two safeties, two corners, go from there, I don't think that'll be the case this year.
Yeah, the numbers game is definitely changing quite a bit as everything
No
gets a
doubt.
little bit more flexible and we were 2 weeks ago and everyone's talking about, well, Ohio State's at 89 or 90 people. How are they possibly going to get under this number? And here they are, boom. It is
Right.
April 27th and they're at 84. So yeah, the with the transfer portal going in and going out, those numbers can fluctuate a lot more, and you can have much bigger needs than you might anticipate at a position pretty quickly. So that will be a fun recruiting cycle to watch for sure as things kind of play out over the next few months. But looking forward to hearing you and Mark Givler talk about all of that on the Gives in the Bank podcast. That is always a fantastic listen. One of those things where as soon as I see that pop up on my notifications, that automatically goes to the top of the playlist. Always love hearing you guys talk about football. And if you want to hear about them talk about football, you can find the Gives in the Bank podcast, along with all of our other great podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, we have Gives in the Bank. Alex Gleitman does Around the Oval. Kevin Noon does the Big Me Kickoff. Tony Girdman and I do Buckeye Weekly. You can find them all by searching Buckeye Scoop. You can subscribe right there. Leave us a 5-star rating and review, which will help other folks find those shows as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, we would appreciate clicking that thumbs up button. And if you want to get notified every time we post a new video, click that little bell to get notified. And then you never miss any of our live shows, any of our new podcast episodes, all that great stuff. And I hear there may be a little bit of recruiting-related travel in the near future as well for a couple folks on our staff. So that should be loaded with fun content and lots of great stuff to talk about. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.